already applied my foundation, so that's why you kind of see like a gradient. Created some cheekbones here with foundation contouring. So let's get started. First, I just put on the foundation underneath my eyes to brighten my eyes, so I don't want any of my eyeshadow falling on that and trying to wipe it away and realizing it's not moving because it's stuck on foundation. So I'm going to put a sealant over that via the form of Laura Mercier Eye Brightening Powder. This is effectively like a setting powder. There's got to be something in here to make your eyes brighten, because seemingly does. I also use it equivalent to like a setting powder. It holds in that concealer or foundation. That way, if fallout drops from your eyeshadow, you can wipe it away a little easier. It's not bulletproof. I mean, if you're using straight up black shadow and it falls down, it's gonna be real tough to get that off. If you're doing a really dark smoky eye, I would recommend you just do your eye makeup and then you apply foundation and your under eye products after. You're just gonna have to redo it if it's falling out and you're trying to wipe it off. It's, spoiler alert, it's not gonna wipe off. Unless you're like really good, but I'm not a makeup artist, I'm not that good. So for a neutral eye, it's okay to do your foundation and stuff before, but for a really dark smoky eye, if you're going to an event or something, or like a party and you're trying to like do some drama, I recommend you just do the foundation after your eyes. But today we're doing a very everyday neutral eyeshadow, so it's gonna be just fine. To apply the eye brightener setting powder underneath my eyes before I do my initial eyeshadow application, I use this angled brush. I think it's a foundation brush. I use it because it works. It's really easy to get right in the corners there where I applied that foundation and set it. So just to show you, like, it's a very small amount of product. Just sets the foundation underneath it. So it is a small cup of product, but it lasts a very long time because you're only using a tiny, tiny bit. So once that is applied, you can set it and forget it. Now we're gonna move on to primer. I use the Urban Decay primer, eyeshadow primer potion. This is a very good one. It also lasts you a very long time. So it's like 24 bucks or something like that. I've used a couple of other ones, and truthfully, I haven't really found one that works better or worse. I've used this, I think, since I was like 16, and it's a staple product, so I just keep buying it. It works well, I have no complaints. As a quick reminder, eyeshadow primer, think of it like glue. It's going to be very tacky when you apply it, and it dries with a little bit of tackiness as well. This is, to me, more like a glue stick. Like, you put the glue stick on and it maintains that tackiness. And the whole point is because it will hold on to the pigment that you're about to put on your eyes so that it doesn't come off throughout the day. So if you were struggling with your eyeshadows creasing or anything like that, add a primer in. It'll last you forever too. I buy like one of those a year. They last forever. Now I'm going to move over to eyeshadows. I can show you the palettes that I'm using today. I'm using the 35X Big Primpin' and the Morphe palette. This is the Stunning Vibes palette. This has no bearing on the look I'm about to do. I picked these because they have a nice range of neutral shades, so I will use a variety of them, but bottom line, whatever palette you like or colors you like, you can do. By the way, I have a old rag that I keep on my countertop when I'm applying makeup, and it is truly disgusting because by the end of it, it looks like it has been beaten up, because I take any of my excess pigment from my powders or foundations on any of my brushes, and I clean them on that like as I go. So it generally keeps them with less product on them. All right, first thing I'm gonna do is just take a very my skin tone shade, and I'm gonna fill this brush with it. And I'm gonna tap any excess off. The more product that you can prevent from falling, the better, because it's just less that you have to wipe away and less that it can shade your foundation that you put on. All right, so I'm gonna do an overall coat, and the entire point of this is to give that tacky primer something to hold on to. That way, when I go and add the real color that I want to add on top, it is not going to stay put to where we can't blend it. So we obviously want our eyeshadows to stay throughout the day, but when we are blending it, we want it to be able to blend. And I've noticed that when you put on the primer, if you don't put a coverage shade on top, good luck trying to blend it. It will not move. Think about like taking a crayon, on top of glue stick, right? Like, so if you smear glue stick on a paper and then you rub a crayon over it, try to blend that. It's not working. Same concept. Now that we have set the eyes with an all over shade, we're gonna go in and add some dimension. These are the pour brushes that I use. So 3 different sizes, largest, medium, smallest. Think of this as going transition, broad blending, a little bit tighter, and then shading where you can create like a lot of depth by like tighter shadow circles. That's how I use those. If I'm doing a darker color in the crease or something, I generally use the smaller ones, and the lighter colors or like bigger shading, I'll use the bigger ones. And then this guy right here is usually what I use on the lid for whatever accent shade I'm doing. So let's start with the bigger brush. And I'm using a mix of Glam Room and Beauty Secret. Once again, the colors that I'm using here are not super important. It's more so like how I'm applying them. I fill the brush and then I tap it off with the edge of the board so that any excess will fall off it on the board instead of on my face. All right, so then I go through small tiny circles starting on the outside. It's not like a really dramatic cat eye, but I want the eye to be pulled up and lifted up. So I'm going to create kind of an angle with that. So I'm blending out and in with big circles. It's not a ton of color, and that is intentional. It is easier to add color than it is to remove it. So, starting lighter. I'm going to switch to my medium brush and go in with a slightly darker shade right here and blend that with one of the transition shades I actually just used. And tap, and exact same thing, but just a little tighter and a little lower on the eye, more in the crease. Very similar to how I tried to create that gradient, like the contouring of my foundation. I'm sort of doing the same thing here. It's just limiting how much blending I have to do. Or I should say it's doing the blending for me. And then we'll go in with our much tighter, smaller tapered brush. I'm going to use like these two. And make even tighter circles in that crease line. And I can use kind of like a windshield wiper motion. Go in like that. So you can see the difference between those two eyes. It added a nice crease right there. But it still looks like a gradient, right? It's not a harsh line. I mean, you can totally do a harsh line if that's the look that you're going for, but for me today, I'm just going for kind of like an everyday look. All right, so I'm going to use that same brush, and I'm going to go down here with my darker colors and tap 2 of those. Now I'm going to apply this lightly. I'm trying to add a deeper crease and a deeper smoke in the corner, but I don't want a line. And obviously adding darker colors, you can risk having a little bit, like it not being blended very well. So I apply it very lightly with really quick circles so that the blending is like maintained as I apply it. And friendly disclaimer, I'm not a makeup artist, so I don't know if this is like technically appropriate. All I know is I like to put on makeup, and this is what looks good on me. And I've watched a lot of makeup videos, so maybe I have some authority. I don't know, probably not. But so as you can see, that created a nice gradient. You can tell, see guys, you see that darker stuff falling? It's still falling out a little bit, despite my best intentions of tapping the brush, it's still falling slightly. So I'm gonna take this fan brush, empty fan brush, there's no color or anything on this, and I am gonna like lightly wipe that away. It is not bulletproof, as I said before. Particularly if you're using really dark colors, you'll see it fall down. It's gonna be really freaking hard to wipe that away. The setting powder that we put on underneath our eyes will help that. Like, it will mitigate it to some degree, but it is not bulletproof. And if you're struggling with dark circles under your eyes, you probably should do your foundation or concealer after you do your eyeshadow. until you get more practice, like being a little bit more controlled. If I'm doing like a dramatic look, best believe I'm holding off on the foundation, because I've learned the hard way that you just waste product because you're taking it off and putting it right back on. Okay, so I like a gold, works on me. It matches the hair or something. I don't know, it's my color, so I like a gold lid. So I use a combo of these two shades, or really just any kind of glittery pigmented shade. And I will apply that on the lid. I like to start sort of in the middle and work my way to the inner section of the lid. That way, just like more of the pigment. So like I do tap it so pigment falls, but the majority of the pigment is going in the center of the eyelid, which is where you want to see it. And then if I work my way in, it goes there. And so that way, by the time that I'm like fanning it out like this, it's kind of just fading into that other look. So it sort of does the blending for me. Now, if I wanted a really, really dramatic lid, I would obviously draw a more windshield wiper style right under that crease line, and you would have really sharp lid, but I'm going for more of a sunset gradient. So I'm not doing that. It makes it honestly to where I don't even have to blend, because like as I do that, just kind of like whatever falls that way, it blends it for me. Next, I like to accent under the eye, so I always pull down a shade that either complements or is the shade that I put on my lid, and I will pull that down under my eye as an accent with the same brush. It's just the way I like to wear it. Up to you if you like under eye makeup or not, but this is my preference. And then so I will then take one of the darker shades that I used, and honestly for under eye, I feel like it looks best when you kind of use a variety of shades that you used on your eyelid and kind of blend them together so that it just picks up on any of the shades in your eye. So I will kind of just like dab around the palette. I don't even know if I use that one, but whatever, they all look the same. So I just kind of blend those together, and with this very fine tapered brush, tight tapered brush, I will go in and add a little bit of smudging underneath. And I always start in the outer corner and blend in. I don't like a strong line and all the way through under, and so very similar to how I applied that in the center and then kind of let the excess be the blending, I do that here. So I'll start in the corner and make it meet right where I finish that crease, and that's where I'll put the most color, and then I'll taper that off, just like light sweeping motions, and you can see it just kind of blends it for you. You don't really even have to do anything technical. So, and you can tell the difference, like one application, two applications. Like, don't be afraid to layer. Definitely be afraid to go in harsh on the first one, because like I said, it's easier to add than it is to take off. And I don't know about you, but I'd be pretty pissed right now if I had to like completely restart because I went aggressive and like drew a harsh line. If I had to start over, I'd be annoyed. So it's easier to add. Another thing that I like to do is take that same accent that I added here, and I will add it right underneath, very, very tight to the shadowing that I just did. To me, it kind of makes it look like I put the gold on first and shadowed over it, which I didn't do. So I really like that. I'm gonna clean this up underneath, coming in with a tapered brush and like make that line a little sharper. So it will get cleaned up, but I'm okay with it looking a little messy while I continue. So it's not final product. Okay, one brush that I forgot to mention is a blending brush by e.l.f. So it is literally $1. This is top 5 makeup brushes for me. I'm sure there are better blending brushes. I will not try them because I love this one. It is, like I said, it's $1 and it works. I don't even know what shape that is, but it's a beautiful one. It's like a pentagon. I will use a very light skin tone color, and occasionally I'll add a little bit of sparkle or under eye highlighter. Like I like to apply it on my brush with, like if I'm going flat like that to kind of cover the entire brush, and then just the tips I'll put in the shinier highlighter shade. And then I will tap it off to get any excess off. And the reason I do that is because I can go in with one swoop right here, and the highlighter shade will go under the brows, and the bottom half of the brush is filled with that more skin tone color. And that helps me blend that like literally in like one swoop. It already looks so much more blended than this side. And so I will do that over a couple, and that blends out that crease that I just sort of makes it look a lot softer than this. Hopefully y'all can see the difference. If y'all can't see the difference in this, then I've been doing makeup very poorly my entire life. But I can see the difference, so I'm gonna keep doing it. All right, I'm gonna do it on this side. This brush is like magic for me. I have never been a pro blender. Like that's probably one of the things that I've struggled with the most with makeup is just not having really, really harsh lines. And that is like the single-handed tool that has made it to where I feel like my eyeshadow is not super harsh. All right, and so after I did that, what I'm doing now is going in with this very, very light transition shade right here and a dab of that, brushing it off really well, and then like barely, like you can see light between that because I'm barely touching it. I'll barely go over where that crease was and add slightly bit more transition shade. Because that blending brush does take away some of the transition shade, just to kind of like reinforce that gradient. So it does look, I need a better word than natural. I have glitter on my eyes right now. It's clearly not natural, but you know, a little bit more blended. I don't know what the word is. Because this blending brush can sometimes overcorrect the harsh line and it takes away some of that gradient. So I'll go in very, very faintly and just add that in, usually. Sometimes I don't even have to add product. I just use like residue, basically, on the like eyeshadow, residual eyeshadow, and layer that on. But that creates a nice blend gradient. It works. Now that I have blended the shadows, I'm pretty happy with this shape. I like kind of that cat eye look. I try to draw everything up. One, because I have a round face, and so I think it helps create more of that angle. To kind of like matches the cheekbone angle, right? I try to draw it up, and it helps kind of break up the donut. But also because I am over the age of 30, and as we know, things over the age of 30 tend to go down, and we are trying to defy gravity. I take a black liner. I've used a bunch of different colors. I don't stick with black liner. I like a deep shade kind of in the edge to help draw that cat eye up. So black just generally works, and then I'll put a shadow powder on top of it to seal it. Black is obviously the blackest eyeliner that you can get, and I get a little scared when I see black liner like all the way across the lid because it can really close the lid in unless you're going for, you know, that kind of look. But even though this is more of a neutral, lighter look, like everyday style, black doesn't do that because I use it very sparingly. So I take my black liner and I edge just the edge. Like I don't even come all the way halfway into my eye. I'm truly just doing the edge. This is kind of giving me a little bit of pigment to build off of for an eyeliner shadow line, but that way it's not closing my eye in. I still have the gold on the inner part of my eye to help open my eye up. So I then take my angled brush. I'm going to apply a shadow on top of it. I very rarely use like a black shadow. I know I use black liner, but the reason I do that is because I use a lighter shade on top of it that kind of helps blend it in, so it kind of creates more of a smoked out look, but not super stark. I'm going to do that with the darkest shade in the palette. It's called Smoke Show. Very fitting. I'm going to load up this angle brush and then tap it off. If you're not in the habit of tapping off your brushes to get that excess off, start doing it with your liners of the darkest shade you're using, and that's going to fall down, and that's going to be hard to clean up, okay? So that would be the place to start. All right, so I pull my eyelid closed, and I go over that area that I just put that liner back and forth and just smudge it in. Smudge, smudge, smudge. You can see that fallout down there? Not on this side. Even with tapping it off, you're still gonna get some fallout. So that's when I come in with my fan brush and wipe away. All right, so we're gonna do this again. After I have smudged in, you can see the difference, right? Like that looks a lot more blended and natural, whereas that's a very stark line from just the liner. So this helps a lot. All right, so I'm gonna now go in and I'm gonna draw my wing. I just kind of eyeball this and match it to the width of how I kind of smudged that liner. I'm gonna do the same thing on this side. There we go. Wipe that away. You can wait and wipe it away at the end. The only reason that I tend to wipe away in between steps is because I put my hand here, and I have noticed that if the pigment falls down here and then I put my hand here, it kind of smushes it into the skin. It's really harder. It's much harder to both, one, get it off, but then two, cover it with a powder or something at the end. Okay. And then occasionally I will go in if I feel like this needs to be blended in a little bit more darker, and I'll draw this to sort of match the top if I'm going for more of a dramatic angle there. Okay, so what I like about doing the dark eyeliner in the outside corner of the eye and then putting the shadow on top is because it's really easy to create a gradient with shadow, right? We see that on like your eyelid. But if you do a liner all the way across your eyelid, like you're stuck with that dark line. You can blend it out, sure, you can smudge it, but then you're gonna end up with a really smoky look. Like I don't want the inside corners to have any darkness in them right now. I want it to be open and bright, which is why I put gold glitter on my eyelids. It's easier to create kind of a faded line with adding the shadow on top of the liner. The liner helps make this part look really, really dark, and then as I kind of like draw that gradient in, it fades naturally. So then it looks like, oh, that's like it just faded off, right? That's better than having like a line stop in the middle of your eye and then it's very, very noticeable. So I need to clean up things that have fallen. I could have used my own advice and done foundation after, but I am just not that girl. I start with foundation. It's a habit. I've always done it. Even despite my advice, I still am the girl that keeps the makeup eraser right here because I never follow my own advice of putting foundation on after, and I inevitably will get like a notion to do a smoky eye. It's ruined and I have to start over. So, but that is why this is another one of my top 5 favorite brushes, because I can come in at the end and wipe all of that away. Oh, another thing that I like about this brush too is, remember that gold that I put kind of right here? It like helps get any of the excess that's not really blended into the skin yet off. So it looks really, really faint. So I don't know how close I can get. I feel weird getting super close on this camera, but you can kind of see like some of the gold detailing shines through, but it's not like a gold line. So I don't know. I just feel like it's a nice accent. I'm like twisting the head and like the gold from the eyelids is popping with the side. I don't know. I like it. That will conclude the shadow and the brows. I have not added on lashes or mascara to this. I always save mascara to the end. Thanks for getting ready with me live on YouTube and Twitch. If you want to see more of me, which of course you do, then go ahead and subscribe and hit the bell so you'll get notified when I go live or post new content. Better yet, just come get ready with me every weekday live on Twitch.